Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week, along with special guest Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations, Elise King, we're going to take a deep dive look into the Season 2 episode of The Bad Batch titled The Outpost. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is now live on Patreon. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the podcast Force Ghost Conversations, your cozy home for deep dive discussions into all things a galaxy far, far away. And as you know from the preamble and the title of this episode, it is time to talk The Outpost. Yes, the new episode from The Bad Batch. And of course, Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations herself will be here to bring her thoughts and insight to the episode. And that conversation will be on the other side of this break. So you don't want to miss out on that. It is a wonderful episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. Finally, before we get into that conversation, just wanted to share that since this is a midweek release episode, there will not be any news in our appropriately dubbed Cloud City Gossip segment. So be sure to check out our Sunday episode this week, all about The Mandalorian, episode 3, whatever that is titled, so that you can catch up with all the news that has taken place in the Lucasfilm galaxy, including Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow. All that is fair game to talk about. So we'll cover all that in our Sunday release, as well as any other fun tidbits that we want to share during that time. All right, with that, all the housekeeping has been taken care of. This is a spoiler talk, discussion, conversation, interview, if you will. So if you haven't seen the episode, The Outpost of Season 2 of The Bad Batch, what are you doing? Go pause this episode now and go check out that on Disney Plus so that you are caught up and don't have any spoilers in the conversation. So until then, get ready and get on the other side of this break. It will be the conversation you've all been waiting for. Our deep dive conversation all about The Outpost, the new episode from The Bad Batch. Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And of course, this is our Bad Batch focused episode where we're going to talk all about the latest release in Season 2 of The Bad Batch. And this past week's episode was a doozy. It is called The Outpost. And I couldn't just talk about this episode alone. So, of course, naturally, we are bringing back a fan favorite at this point. It is Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations, Elise King. Welcome back to the pod. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thank you for coming back onto the podcast. I think this is a pivotal episode of The Bad Batch. Now, I thought it was a really good episode. I think it was one of the best of the Bad Batch episodes thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you finally got your wish with a crosshair focused episode. You've been teasing, you've been asking for it for so long, and it's finally here and we got it. Did it meet your expectations?
Well, I mean, I can't even say I was right. It was a crosshair episode because I've said that.
Yeah, you can't keep
7
crying wolf and being like, I think the next one's a crosshair one.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
Is that my voice?
I'm gonna let that go for now.
It is not your voice. That's not how you sound.
I agree. It was an excellent Bad Batch episode. I love that they're grounding Crosshair's arc in such drama, grittiness. It just makes the message of what the Bad Batch is trying to convey and connecting the dots from the dark times to the Empire so real. So I can't be mad at this episode. There's so many good things to say about it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it.
Now, I've seen many on the internet say that it is the greatest episode of Star Wars animation ever, and I don't want to, poo-poo on the episode at all, but I don't think it hit that level of praise for me personally. Did it for you?
Yeah, when you told me that before we watched it, I was so curious. So I kind of watched it through that lens. I mean, all of Star Wars animation. I think
Mm-hmm.
I have notes here. Like, I think it's shot beautifully. Like the cinematography, the direction of how it's made, and like the angles they're taking, all that stuff. Color. I think it's beautiful. I think it's very well done. I don't know if I can say like best animation ever, because there are just other episodes in the Clone Wars specifically near the end where like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm so connected to characters in that arc that it's hard for me to look beyond those. Like the one with
Yeah.
Rex trying to take out Ahsoka when Order
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
66 is executed.
Yeah. The whole Siege of Mandalore arc.
The whole like those arcs are like, it's the first time I was convinced outside of like my Disney movies experience and like Pixar, right? Like an animated show could make me feel devastated.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think this is building on that tradition and like maybe perfecting it, refining it in terms of skill and like how it's shot and all that stuff. But I think I don't know. I can't say that. I can't say
Yeah.
like I think it's the best one ever, because there's other things that are more character driven that I think are just amazing.
Agreed. And I would also say like the World Between Worlds Rebels episode is,
Which one is that?
well, the one where Ezra goes into that world
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
is
I
able to pull
mean,
Ahsoka out. I mean, the Ahsoka
Vader
Vader
scene.
scene,
Yeah, I mean, there's
Maul
just
and Kenobi on Tatooine.
yeah. So I guess if you're saying, oh, the Maul and Kenobi one, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just yeah. I mean, there's just not a lot of other heavy hitters. If they're talking like technically, then maybe, because I remember I had like how they shoot Mayday and Crosshair in the cave.
Mm-hmm.
I remember looking back and being like, this is shot
Yeah.
so well. So maybe if they're talking technically, but I think other writing, other character development, other arcs have been so powerful. There's just too much good to choose from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're spoiled for choice here, but
yeah,
it's just an interesting discussion point that I wanted to bring up here about that, because I did see it circulating online a lot, so I wanted to pinpoint your thoughts on that after we watched
I
it.
think
a
the
few
internet
times.
loves Crosshair too.
The internet was waiting for this episode just as much as you were.
Yeah,
I would say, and
I wasn't waiting. Like, he's not my favorite.
Yeah,
I'm not waiting it because I need to see Crosshair. I'm more interested in like what's happening outside the world of the Bad Batch on their adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I was looking forward to. Like,
yeah, because they do feel a little like
isolated
insular.
Or insular, yeah. Like, I wanted to feel the weight of the Empire again, because
Mm-hmm.
real stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to that point, how did you feel about the handling of the clones here?
I mean, the clone arc in general just like breaks my heart, and I feel for them so hard. And so it was hard to meet another sassy clone that
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy and like would love to get to know more. Mayday was great. He's sassy. You like get that brotherhood vibe, that family vibe, found family. And I just knew they were gonna poo-poo on him.
You could tell from the start that this wasn't going to end well.
I had hope, but I mean, nothing with Crosshair ends well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he hasn't hit rock bottom yet. He had to like have a reality punched him like in the hole in the chest, and
yeah,
that's what this episode did. And I knew it was coming, and I didn't want Mayday to be the casualty of it, but he had to be.
With Mayday, with Crosshair, with the rest of the clones that are in this mission, has the tragedy of the clones come full circle?
I think we'll definitely see more tragic moments with the clones, but a group of clone troopers doing their job, being forgotten, being expendable.
I was like, does it get really any worse than
it's
this?
The perfect example of how the Empire season treats them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I really think the Boba Fett moment where you see the clone veteran in the streets like really hit home.
Oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, sorry, Obi-Wan, yeah. Not Boba Fett. Obi-Wan Kenobi just like really hit home the reality of it, of like these clones just didn't go away. They either escaped, died, were killed, or became like homeless. I mean, there's just not a lot of good stories here. I hope we see a couple good stories. But
I would say I think that the tragedy has reached its like.
I think
I don't think it can get any worse than this now. Like they are no longer seen as people. They've lost their agency in the eyes of the Empire. They're just units.
I think the fall will take a while in terms of like they've reached the pinnacle, and we've seen how the Empire views them. But I think we'll continue to see moments of clones realizing that. I don't think it's going to happen all at once.
Well, I don't think it will either, but I would just say like the journey of we need you, we value you, you are doing a great service to the Republic.
I would argue that's not even how they were treated when the Republic was in it. You are soldiers. You are clone. Like they talked about them as
they definitely
are
a bit more, but the Jedi were kinder to them. At least, Mace Windu aside. But Yoda has that great moment in the Clone Wars where he's like, each of you are special beings in the universe.
Yeah, I think there were specific relationships built that we were witness to that showed people who fought next to them valued them.
Yes, and now the Jedi are gone. But they really had that last.
But I think that's a facade of how I don't think anyone beyond those individual relationships, like the system didn't care. Those in charge didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have used them longer. But I also don't have faith the Jedi Council would have gone against the Senate if they were like, we're disbanding
I don't think
them.
so either. I think that was the point eventually, was to not have an army because they wanted to go back to peacetime. So it was a means to an end, of course.
I guess you would hope they would have done it better, but I honestly think that the clone, this was always going to happen to the clones. It's just
I think it was too.
Horribly.
It's hard to see.
Yeah, it's hard to watch whenever.
When we've crafted these relationships with them over the course of 20 years now. I mean, going back to Attack of the Clones. It's just sad to see these characters that we've come to have in our homes, all these episodes of them and just embracing that, and just a loss. Sad.
Yeah, but I also like that the Star Wars universe is making us feel the loss instead of just being able to they disappeared. We don't know what happened to them. Like they're out there. Are they, we can kind of turn a blind eye. We're not allowed to turn a blind eye to them anymore in the story.
Yeah.
So there's an honor in that, I think.
Elise, the planet that they're on is called Barton 4, where they're protecting this cargo unit.
Okay, yeah.
What is the point of this planet?
I think that's the whole point. There is no point. As soon as they said we're here protecting these crates, I was like, I bet there's nothing in the crates that's actually important.
They're protecting the armor of their replacements.
Yeah, and when
they can't even use.
And when I saw it was only armor, I was like, this is perfect, especially since these I loved the symbolism of, because Mayday and his cohort, they look like mummies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
they took scraps to make themselves warmer, and it looked very mummified to me. And I was like
they were just dead men walking.
They're already dead men walking.
That's a really good visual point. I didn't even pick up on that. Good job.
I'll always see mummy.
But you're absolutely right, though. It is a visual point that they made it clear to highlight in this episode a few times.
What did you think of Mayday?
I liked him a lot. I loved his hassiness. I thought it went back to old time Rex.
I know. I was like, he would have been best friends with Rex.
Yeah, it was a real big throwback to that, especially those early Clone Wars episodes where,
which I think is why
he and
Crosshair
Ahsoka,
has an affinity for him.
They always, Rex and Ahsoka have a great relationship now, but at the start it was all about that. In my experience, respect is earned rather than that whole arc was very much similar here, where Mayday was I technically outrank you. I'm a commander. You're a lieutenant.
Yeah.
But I'm being phased out, and you're being a dick about it. Sorry for the for the family friendly audience here. But I did not like Lieutenant Nolan at all in this episode, and
The new
I was
Rampart.
well.
At first, I was
not New Rampart,
not
but New Rampart.
At the beginning, I was like, "Is this the new Rampart?" I am so annoyed. He's even more annoying than Rampart because one, they made his face more annoying, and two, his voice is so annoying.
It was so prim and proper that it annoyed you.
Grated on you, and you're just like, "Oh,
you are used equipment."
Yeah, I was just like, I would have no restraint, especially if I were like cold and hungry. No restraint.
And he's like, I demand respect from you. And he's like, well, in my experience, respect is earned, not something that I just give willy-nilly here. How many missions have you been on? Oh, this is your first?
I think the sassiness is also something that endeared Crosshair to him. Or endeared Mayday to Crosshair, like, relatively quickly. Because it's, like, very much a Bad Batch vibe. Very much a Rex vibe.
Yeah.
It's also, like, kind of that brotherhood vibe that I think Cohort will not admit he misses. Also, he was a soldier that followed orders. He followed orders till the end, until the orders killed him. And he saw there's no honor in that.
Agreed. Why is the recurring image of the ice vulture important?
I mean, they circle dead things. They're dead men walking.
They are dead men walking, but you see Crosshair looking at it all the time. Is that him coming to grips with this fact?
The English class lover in me is like, I think it's a representation of his insides. Like, I think he's kind of dead inside.
Yeah. You think he's dead inside?
Yeah.
Why do you think he's dead inside?
You're grilling me. You're grilling me.
This is an interview conversation / discussion.
No, I enjoy this. I mean, I think he's been dead since he left the Bad Batch. I think he's been dead since he's seen people, like, there's just little moments that have chipped away at him. He's, like, clung so tightly to his identity of good soldiers, follow orders. And he's seen time and time again. That makes him lose his family. That makes him... Soldiers are killed. Soldiers abandon posts because they no longer believe in it. Commanders treat them like crap, and they're just forgotten and abused. So I think he's lost himself. And I mean, he's basically, one, functioning for a dead system, and two, is dead himself.
I like that a lot. You did a great job extrapolating on your original thought there.
I did well in English class.
I can tell. It's almost like you went into a heavily writing field in your post high school degree world.
Yeah, a little bit. Any thoughts on you? I mean, you obviously had thoughts.
Oh, I mean, I think that was the same. You put it more eloquently than I had in my head. It was just more of like, a vulture that generally comes around as a buzzard when dead things are about to die and expire. And it just added to that symbolism of the tragedy, I thought.
Yeah. Also foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing, of course. Yes. Foreshadowing that a death coming, you're right. One way or the other. And it just, again, like I said, just added to the tragedy of the clones. Because it's really, in my mind, a concluding point, right? This is their used equipment. They're literally guarding something that is deemed more important. And it's cargo. It is uniforms. It is equipment. That is deemed more valuable than their own lives.
Yeah.
Like, they're not even allowed to use that equipment, which is just harsh.
When Mayday dies and Crosshair's just sitting there on his knees, and I saw his eyes, like, start to just lose it. Like, you can tell when, like, people's eyes, like, they've lost it. Like, they've cut all strings. All strings are gone. And internally, I was like, lose it. I was like, lose it, Crosshair. Crush this jerk. And I didn't expect the whole, like, scientific tabletop thing, but I was rooting so hard internally for him to just let go, lose control, and rebel against the injustice of what he just faced. Like, it was so satisfying to see him do that.
Well, that's a great thought you bring up here, Elise. Do you think Crosshair was justified in his actions at the end? And of course, that action being killing Lieutenant Nolan.
I mean, within the system, no. The command, he was his superior. He could do whatever he wanted. But it felt really good to see him, that jerk, die. I'm not gonna lie.
Taking the system out of it.
Taking the system out of it. I mean, yeah.
Is this a righteous kill? Because if that is so, then he's justified in it, right? You're making the point that it's a vengeful act. Maybe
I think it's vengeful.
Okay, so he's not necessarily justified. It feels good. Is it a dark side path they were taking here?
I mean, I don't know if it's justified. I don't know if it matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does it matter? That's maybe
I don't think it matters.
a more interesting question. Because clearly it matters to the Empire. They're gonna
it matters to the Empire.
Sock it
I
to
think
them.
in terms of like the overall universe, is this good or bad? I don't think that conversation matters. I think it's Crosshair finally opening his eyes and realizing he's a piece of crap on the bottom of someone's shoe. And nothing he does is in service to anything good. Now,
here's a follow-up question to that I think is a little bit...
Wait, I want to hear, do you think it's righteous?
No, I think it was a vengeful act. Yeah. I think internally he feels like he was justified, but in the grander scheme of like, is this right or wrong?
I think it was a little bit more selfless than Crosshair has been in the past. Like, not selfless in like, I did this to save someone, but more selfless in like, I'm not doing this to survive. You know, like in the past, he's been very opportunistic and like looked out for number one, and he like thought beyond himself at that point. And he was also, you know, grieving kind of. But yeah, I don't think that matters if it's good or bad. I think it's more just like him snapping and realizing that no one's going to look after him and no one cares about him, and he's serving a pointless thing.
Is Crosshair abandoned again?
Yeah. His ideals are gone. This foundation in which he left his family for has disintegrated.
Yep.
He is broken.
Agreed. He put everything into the Empire.
He gave up everything.
He doubled down on it. He took out his chip and made the conscious choice that he is a part of the system.
Yeah.
And that system has said, we don't want you anymore.
Yeah.
You have served your purpose. Go about the rest of your life and die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not going to give you resources in thanks of what you've done for us.
This was the rock bottom I was waiting for.
Yeah.
I also think it helped. It wasn't anyone connected with his past. It was a clone that he admires. He just met. There's no baggage attached to him. There's no other conflicting feelings. It's simply a clone doing his job.
It's transactional.
Yeah.
Do you think he blames himself at all for what happens in this episode, especially considering what happens with Mayday? And he's partially responsible for the avalanche. Do you think he blames himself at all?
I don't think so. I think he's drowning in regret, but I don't think...
You don't think he's connecting dots at all? He's like, I fired the blaster that blew up their grenade pack that sent
I think he understands, like, he was doing what he needed to. He's a soldier. He did what he needed to in the moment to help them get out. He did all he could to save him, dragged him through a blizzard.
A couple days too.
Yeah, huddling over him, sacrificing his self for this guy. I think it's more just he's grieving the overall idea of his future is lost, his past means nothing. He lost his family, and he's alone. I think he's drowning in regret. I think that's probably one of them.
Yeah, it's definitely rock bottom, as you mentioned. This is how could it get any worse from other than dying?
Yeah.
But living and losing everything that you connected to, whether it be the Bad Batch and then the Empire again. It's a harsh reality to face.
Yeah. So I was not expecting him to be on a scientist slab.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought he'd be in jail or something, or he'd get
I thought
away.
he'd just die right there potentially.
Yeah, or just you thought he was gonna die?
He could have.
You thought that was the end
I
of
mean,
Crosshair?
very well could have.
I didn't think they were gonna get rid
And
of
then
him
that
like
could have
that.
been the jumping off point for the Bad Batch getting involved again.
You thought that could have been the catalyst?
Absolutely.
I didn't think that.
I mean, if Mayday passed, then there's a great chance that Crosshair could also go too in that same vein, and just really.
Well, I think logically from like the story,
but I don't think
within the story, I don't think they were going to sacrifice something like that. But it would be interesting if Crosshair and Omega end up in the same place.
That's a very valid point.
And then all of a sudden, Crosshair's confronted with his past.
And he has to make another choice.
Yeah,
indeed. Where do you think his story goes next with that cliffhanger? Do you think it has ties to what they're looking for with Omega? Do you think it has something to the key of whatever they're working on or they're conjuring up in that lab?
I would think that they're not going to waste unique genetic material, which Crosshair is, because he's, a mutation.
Mm-hmm.
I could see them trying to figure out him to use in future weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're done with him as a soldier.
Mm.
I think he'll probably also learn some secrets that he'll hopefully be able to smuggle out in some way, or at least show the audience some secrets of the Empire.
Maybe. Do you think the Bad Batch gets word of? Maybe is he bait? Is this bait for the Bad Batch?
Ooh, that's a good idea. I was thinking more like Omega gets captured, because right now it seems like that scientist doesn't understand that she's connected to the Bad Batch. He only knows that she's something to the scientist.
Yeah.
What's her name? The
Nalase.
Yep. Yeah. I think I don't know if they made that connection yet. I was just thinking Omega would get captured. She and Crosshair find each other, and then they either hatch an escape, or they are saved, or Crosshair sacrifices himself so Omega gets out. Yeah. I don't know, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
A lot of different avenues I think that they could take the story moving forward that connect to the Bad Batch. And so, I mean, it's going to, I think.
Do you think the Bad Batch would come?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they wouldn't.
It depends on the story they hear, because they don't know that Crosshair would want them to come.
Maybe. I mean, I just think that enough time has passed. I think there's been forgiveness.
We know Tech misses him. And if Tech misses him, then the rest miss him.
I think they're all ready to welcome him back, as they've always had. Frankly, he just needed to open his arms up, and they'd welcome him right back in. He just needed so if the message is right, which I think you've alluded to there, and if it's crafted properly, then I think they come back hunting, searching for him. He just needs whoever in the Empire is crafting that message to potentially get them into a trap. Yeah. They need to craft it very well.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm very curious to see how their cross paths, but their paths are getting closer of crossing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That was all the questions I had. Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about in this episode?
I just had a couple quick notes. One, the music hits again. Music was excellent.
Absolutely.
The theme of Crosshair's episodes are just beautiful and haunting, and I think really underscore the emotional bombs that we experience.
No doubt there.
I felt like the Raiders on that planet had Tusken Raider vibes, but snow versions in terms of
that's interesting. Yeah,
their masks and I don't know, just their whole aesthetic seemed kind of like
it makes
snow.
Sense. Yeah, the only way to
Raiders.
survive. I mean, they have to have everything covered up. They're going into these caves.
Yeah, so
there's not much to mine from this planet, to be honest. But hey, they've made it their home.
Yeah, so that was something I was like, oh, that's kind of a reminder to me. Also that whole avalanche scene and Crosshair punching his fist out was a Mulan moment to a T. Yes. I was like, just like the
Yeah,
bad
you
guy
did like it.
punching
You
his
did
fist
like that
out.
a lot.
I was like, wow, that's crazy. At first, I thought it was going to be the two of them hiding on the other side of the rock, because in Mulan, the snow shoots above the rock, and that's how they're saved. But no, sadder better ending than that. But I was like, that's very Mulan to me.
Yeah.
And the other one was, this is the biggest reach I've ever thought in my whole life, but
Ooh.
and I'm not okay. I don't think all New Zealanders sound the same with their accents, but the female scientist at the end kind of sounded like a grown-up Omega to me.
Oh, well, maybe it could have been Michelle Lang. I don't know in the
and
credits.
I was like, could this be another clone that they took off? But then I was like, no, because the Kaminoans never let humans into their technology, like, humans into their technology rooms. Like, they wouldn't have had. I was like, what if there was a first Omega? But then it didn't work with the timeline because she was in the first batch. But for a minute, my brain spiraled.
I like your rampant speculation here. That was totally. Well, what if this happened?
I was just like, wow, like, that's crazy.
You know, you're getting more and more into the Star Wars community when you're just like, well, what if this is the thing? And
I was like, all right, dial it back. It makes no sense with timeline and established canon. But I was like, that would be a wild twist.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to bring up was I thought the snow was just animated perfectly. I don't think I've ever seen snow animated that good. Like the individual like flakes almost.
Yeah. I mean, it was technically beautifully done. And again, we leave every week being like, is this animation?
Mm-hmm. Kid show?
Yeah, kid show animation? Really? Gosh, I would love to see a live version of the Bad Batch in order just to see Tamora Morrison play all those characters. He'd have to really act.
It'd be wild.
He'd be acting crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if
all the research he'd have to put into it.
Could he pull off a tech? I don't know, but
I'm sure he could. He would just be Tamora Morrison about it, and you'd have to accept that it's not D. Bradley Baker's interpretation of it. So it would be different. Of course, it would be like the Grand Inquisitor and Rupert Friend and Obi-Wan Kenobi being different interpretations of it.
Yeah, I think it's not something I need. It's just something I sometimes think about as like a fun little thought experiment.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue the thought experiments next week as we get into another hopefully pivotal episode of The Bad Batch. I mean, they're all pivotal at this point as we head into the season finale here very soon.
Yeah.
But for those of you at home, thanks again for listening. And we'll be back in your feeds this Sunday talking about the brand new episode of The Mandalorian that also premiered today. So be sure to check out that. Subscribe on all the podcast sites that you can. And share us with your friends and continue the conversation with us on our social media channels. And until then, may the Force be with you. Take care.